Hello, my name is Bridget Guila, and welcome to another episode of Bridge to Wellness. Today's special guest is Bryan Falchuk. Before we move on, I'd like to extend my greatest love and gratitude to all of you around the world. For those of you who are staying in place, for those of you who are frontliners, and for those of you who have lost your loved ones, we here at Bridge to Wellness extend our deepest love and condolences to all of you. Moving forward, Bryan Falchuk. Bryan Falchuk is a certified personal trainer and behavioral change specialist. He's also a life and executive coach, a C-level executive, and the best-selling author of Do a Day, in which he teaches people how to overcome challenges and achieve goals. His most recent book, The 50-75-100 Solution, deals with tough relationships and shares a path to making them more supportive and productive. His work has appeared in many major publications, such as the LA Times, Chicago Tribune, Baltimore Sun Inc. magazine, and more. Bryan has also shared his message across many stages, such as a guest on over 150 podcasts and radio shows, and on multiple TEDx events. Bryan says, people don't change, lives do. His goal is to help people change their lives forever. You were very, very passionate about your speech, and you don't stop.
Yeah.
And you stay motivated. What keeps you motivated?
I was able to connect with what really matters to me in a way that I hadn't gotten to through the rest of my life before this moment. And that's a center I can come back to, because we all face tough moments and tough times, and I know what I can turn back to put my head back in what I'm trying to achieve and push through, whatever it is I'm facing. So I come back to center a lot, and I know what my center is, which is, I feel really lucky to be able to do that.
Is that your direction?
I'm not Buddhist, but I absolutely, I find the philosophy of Buddhism, setting aside whether you believe in the religion or not, the philosophy behind it, the mindset, the way to look at our lives and how we relate to each other, it's beautiful. It's also really hard not to see the truth.
มันก็เป็นเจตนาเป็นความตั้งใจที่คุณแม่จะใช้ชีวิตเพื่อที่จะรับใช้ใครได้บ้างเราเชื่อว่ามนุษย์ทุกคนพ้นทุกข์ได้นั้นการช่วยคนให้กลับไปถึงความบริสุทธิ์ตั้งมั่น
And once I was exposed to that, I found myself just sort of feeling enlightenment. Not in the truest sense that Buddha achieved, but in terms of understanding things I was struggling with and seeing a different way to go about them. There's so much clarity and peace in the message, and it really struck me. I think I was probably open to it, but I wasn't trying. I wasn't seeking anything per se, and it just hit me with such clarity. And that to me is, it's not often that we find messages that come to us that clearly. So I've tried to soak in as much as I can, studying it as much as I'm able to.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Can I tell you a story?
Please, yeah.
I went to a monastery and I studied the way of life. And what I really noticed, what really grabbed my attention about this practice is the shifus, the nuns, how they listen. Active listening, the true essence of active listening. And I noticed that they're so mindful about everything that they do. For example, there was a nun who was walking towards the restroom, and then I saw a child run up to her, and she slowly turned around and and gently looked down at the child. And the child was so active, but she remained calm. And she stayed so centered. She stayed so centered while the child was asking her questions. And then the child was complete with their conversation and took off running. What I really noticed and what I loved was that she stayed until she knew the child was complete. And then she slowly turned around and slowly walked to the restroom. These are the little things that I had noticed. That she noticed, she recognized everything. She was so peaceful. And there was a lot of acceptance, and there was no reactiveness. She really truly cared about that moment. And this is what I noticed while watching your TED Talk. You keep yourself open. I thought, man, his heart is really open, and you're open to true enlightenment.
Thank you.
And you never stop learning. And this is why you keep coming out with new books. Because you keep learning. And that's why I have you here.
Well, thank you.
Because I noticed that you will continue to evolve. And I'd like to share that with the world.
Yeah, I think that's something some people struggle with. They just want the answer and they want to be done with it. And I kind of want the opposite of that. I want to be better. I want to grow. I want to feel more in this moment. And I also recognize there's so much ahead of me that I have no idea about, that I'm going to learn about and grow and challenge myself and have tough moments. And the books come out of that process. And when I come to a place where I feel like I've just shifted, I've moved myself to some other place through what I've learned. People ask me, what's your next book about? I have no idea, because it hasn't presented itself yet. And I thought I knew what my second book would be, and I went with something completely different because it came to a place where I really had no choice but to write the second book I wrote. Because I had moved my understanding, and this one's about relationships. I moved my understanding about relationships, and most importantly, my role in them, both what's not working, but also how to get things to work better, regardless of who's at fault. That wasn't an idea I could hold to myself anymore. And I want to keep growing and learning that way. Otherwise, it's a bit boring. And I think we're missing our own capability, which will continue to evolve through our lives.
One of my taglines is, it's a journey of a lifetime. That maybe there's shadows that have not merged yet. Do you ever feel any triggers like you're so close to getting it?
Well, so, we talked before about my first book, Do a Day, and I've published it twice, actually. I changed it. And it's not that I undid anything I had written. It's that after a year, there was very clearly a gap. And my own understanding got deeper. Even though I had spent from 2011 to 2017 when it was published, so I'd spent 6 years living and feeling and coaching and speaking on the ideas of it, I still hadn't gone through my full process with it. And it was actually doing an interview, someone called me out for it. And he's like, you talk about your center, you talk about your motivation, but I don't think you're at the core yet. I think you're still one layer too far out in the surface. And he was right. I hadn't yet gotten comfortable with myself and with recognizing that I deserved better and that I could actually love myself. And it's an uncomfortable thing for some people to talk about. And I almost don't care. Like, that discomfort is actually a good sign. It means you need to start to hit into this.
And being bold.
Yeah. And, some people get squeamish when they hear that term, self-love. And again, like, it's okay to be squeamish with it. We're not going to beat around the bush. We're not going to give it a nickname that you feel more comfortable saying in public. It is what it is. You should love yourself. You should believe that you're capable of better and you deserve better. And that's what I think the essence of self-love is. I wasn't yet close enough to that feeling. And so when I wrote the book the first time, self-love's not discussed anywhere in there. I mean, maybe in passing in one section, but not meaningfully. And once, in this interview, he called me out, it just became so clear to me. And I had another one of these moments. And so I said, I need to change the book. And it was coming up to the 1-year anniversary. So great time. I'll re-release it for the 1 year and add this new section. And to me, what I've come to realize is self-love is actually, if we think of our lives as building a house, I always said, your true motivation, your center, that's the foundation. And that's what you start when you build a house. You start with a strong foundation, but actually it's not true. That's the second step. The first thing you do is you scout out solid ground. You don't put a strong foundation on a swamp. You need, and to me, that solid ground is self-love. So that's the beginning point. And if we don't believe we're capable and deserving of better, it really doesn't matter what other work we do, because a piece of us will always fight that we even deserve to have those things. So you can't move forward.
Yeah. What is your perspective on and looking at other people's faults?
I think it's very easy to get into that kind of critiquing and judging. It's a social norm. Everybody does it. Social media certainly brings that to the forefront, but it's not serving anything. And I grew up obese. It's something I talk about in the book, and a lot of kids would make fun of me. Or actually, interestingly, I don't think I was bullied all that terribly, considering how much I stood out. It certainly could have been worse, but I got my fair share of it. Ultimately, what's clear to me is when you are doing that to someone, when you're calling them out, making a point of something about them, that is absolutely a statement about how you feel about yourself.
Yeah.
That I'm here, and because in some way I perceive you here, I need to bring you down, or I'm not okay. Well, why don't you try bringing yourself up?
Excellent.
There's two ways for you to be higher than that person in your esteem, and that the best way is to rise yourself up. You do not need to hurt someone else to be okay in life, because it actually doesn't work. Because what happens the next day when you see someone else who you think is better than you? You're right back where you started.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. And how can we even evolve?
I think there's a lot of behavior that's reinforcing the wrong mindset. I mean, politically, the world, not just the US, is very negative. Candidates don't run on what their values are or what they're trying to achieve. They run by putting someone else down. They're against their opponent. They're not for what they actually stand for. And that's definitely a global problem right now. So there's a lot of negativity out there. But we also, we do get into very sort of self-deprecating games on a regular basis, where it's almost socially not just acceptable, but expected that you put yourself down, you make jokes at your own expense. People love it. They think it's funny. We were talking before about sleep and getting enough sleep, and that's the social norm. At work, people are almost wearing how little sleep they got as a badge of honor. And that, I call it like, who has it worse? It's almost like a game, right? And the winner is the one who's absolutely the worst off. But the thing is, you'll never win that game. Because whatever, someone says, I got 2 hours of sleep, the next person can say they got 1 hour. And then someone's going to have no hours. And then it's going to be no hours for 2 days. And it just keeps going. Someone will always have something worse than whatever you thought that you were going to win with. So all you're doing is breeding more and more negativity and celebrating bad things about ourselves.
Yeah.
It's okay if you slept enough last night. It's okay if you did well in a test. It's okay if you got a promotion at work, or you felt good about that thing you did, or how you did on your run, even if it was slower than someone. None of these things matter.
None of it
It's
matters.
okay to feel okay. And we need to just stop playing these negative games, because negativity breeds negative feelings. Yeah. And positivity does the same in the other direction, so why not embrace that?
Fully, wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's really nice when we look out for each other and not be afraid of competitiveness, or if somebody's going to steal ideas, and because we're always going to educate ourselves, and so going back. I love serving and taking care and witnessing, and I always get it back.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
So when we take care of each other in this respect, there's nothing else that we ever need.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. And that's the essence of Buddhism, is reducing suffering. And the idea is the more you do that, the better the whole world is, which you happen to be a part of. So of course it's better for you as well. But I know I feel good knowing I've done good for someone, knowing I've taken care of someone. I'm here in California to talk to you. My family's back home in the Boston area, and I left, some food prepared for my wife and son, and it took care of a few things. Not that they couldn't have done them for themselves, but just knowing that, I just made their life a little bit easier.
Yeah.
That I can't. So my son was telling me how dinner was, and it was the thing that I had left behind, and I just felt so warmed inside, just knowing like he had a good meal, he enjoyed it, he's telling me about it. That makes me feel so good. Would I have appreciated more free time, or slept later so I wasn't preparing things? Yes, but not as much as that feeling I just got.
Yeah.
So giving back, it does something for me as well. And knowing I've taken care of people around me matters.
And taking that extra time, when we become truly compassionate, we become tireless.
Yeah.
True compassion brings that out in us.
Yeah.
Where our eyes are wide open and we say, what else can we do?
Yeah.
What else? It's a beautiful feeling.
Yeah, it is.
It's a liberating feeling. I feel like we're clear, harmonious, tranquil.
Yeah.
Everything goes better.
Yeah. It allows for peace that we may struggle to see otherwise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's talk about one of your most favorite TED Talks.
That's a tough thing to figure out, because I've definitely consumed my fair share of them, and a number of messages have really spoken to me in different ways at different times. So the way I may answer you right now may not be the same as I would a month from now or a month before. What is one of my most favorite ones? So two that I think will always stand out to me are not the ones that are going around and people are holding up as it's that TED Talk that everyone's seen. So having done a few, I've gotten to be live in the audience for I've done 3, so I've sat there for 3 as well. There was a one I did at my alma mater at my college, and it was myself and a professor, and everyone else was students who were presenting, and 2 of the students really just deeply touched my heart with their life story. One was a refugee whose family had gone from Iraq to Jordan and ultimately to the US.
I am a refugee. Although I was not fully aware of what this meant at age 7, there are no words to describe the feelings that flooded over me when my family landed at Miami International Airport. When I realized that we were here to stay. At 7 years old, I was thrust into a new world, a world where I didn't speak the language, where the culture puzzled me, where the people couldn't even pronounce my name. The palm trees that I once knew were replaced by pine. Sand.
Their parents were, I think, physicians or maybe dentists in Iraq, and they had a good life, and they came to the US and, they had nothing. And in Jordan, they were refugees there, so they didn't have anything there, but they came to the US for the sake of their family and for their children and getting them out of danger and into a better path. And yes, ultimately it worked out, but the sacrifice of her parents and the way she related her life story as an 18-year-old, I really sat there in awe of this young woman, what she's been through, the clarity she has about it at such a young age, and the way she looks at her parents and what they've done. That really stood out to me. And it's not to take away from any of the, million view TED Talks or any of that. They're fantastic, lots of great messages.
Yeah.
But there's something really pure
Yes.
when someone is telling you their story, and especially when they see the value of those who've come before them that have really put themselves aside in service of their children or, someone they care about.
Yeah.
There's another one who had a similar, different story, but similar kind of connection around her mother.
Hi. Allow me to introduce myself besides my name. I am Johari. I'm a sophomore. I'm a French and Education Coordinate major. I'm a Black woman. I prefer she, her, hers pronouns. And I'm desensitized, but working on it.
And it really was a very moving day for me. So I think those two tend to stand out a lot.
Sounds like a goddess of compassion.
Yeah.
A little goddess.
I'm very curious to see what happens to these two women as they go off into the world. Obviously, I think very highly of them. I think they've got really bright futures, but bright futures that will impact others. Certainly been set on the right path around that.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear about it too.
Yeah, I'll have to follow up and see.
Yes.
They're still, they have a few years to go.
Yeah.
But they're two people I definitely will watch.
Okay, so I'm interested in sharing about your weight loss.
Yes.
That's a big one.
It is a big one, literally and figuratively.
That really inspires me too. It inspired me, and after reading your book, and I was just hopping on everything, every moment of my life.
Yeah.
And then I started drifting a little bit, and I picked up your book again.
Wow.
And read it again. Yeah.
So those are moments that, that's exactly why I wrote the book. So that means so much to me.
Yeah.
I always said, if only one person read it, well, look, if nobody read it, actually, it did a lot for me. So it still would have served a purpose. And again, that's something that took me some time to feel comfort with. But knowing that if one person was able to make change in their life that they then take in and feel the same way I do about the change that I've gotten to make, then it's worth it. Whether it sells 1 million copies or one, I actually don't care. But to know that I change one life in some way, or I don't change their life, to know that I have a hand in them changing their life or impacting it, that's the whole reason I do this. So thank you for saying that.
Oh, of course. So let's talk about your transition.
Yeah. So growing up, I was the youngest of four, and my parents split up when I was really young, 4 or 5 years old is when things started to fall apart. And I was feeling very unsettled about this. And kids have a basic need to just feel okay and feel taken care of. And I didn't. It's not to say I was left for dead or anything, but my parents had their hands full with what they were going through and 3 other kids. And so my needs were not being met in the way that they had been before. And as a little kid, you don't really understand what to do with those feelings. And so I was seeking comfort, not knowingly. This was no conscious thing. I didn't have a deep discussion with my mother about how unsettled I felt. And I just started looking for comfort, and I found it in food. Because food is very comforting, and it doesn't fight, it doesn't move out, it doesn't, any of the things
and
that I was
a lot of
watching.
people will relate to you on that, on this subject. Yeah.
The trick is food actually does not treat any of those feelings. It does in the moment. Just like when we were talking about, putting someone down to bring yourself up, it works really well in the moment, but then you're left empty afterward because it didn't actually do anything for you. It probably just made it worse. So I started eating a lot, and I would sneak food, and I put on a tremendous amount of weight very rapidly. So by the time I was, about 11 years old, I weighed what I weigh now as a 41-year-old. So, when people joke about, I'll never be at my high school weight again, I hope I'm never at my high school weight again, because that's about 110 pounds more than I am at my best. So I put on about 100 pounds overall from where I should be. And it happened pretty quickly. If you look at a picture of me from age 5 to say 6, 6.5, it's like I was a completely different child. I actually weighed 100 pounds more than my son at the same age, as he's 11. So that's just not okay. And it was getting worse and worse, because not only was I all unsettled about, what's going on in my family, now I also have this weight issue. And now, kids are ridiculing me and I don't fit in clothes and I can't, everyone's running in school. And if I try to run, I'll be by far the slowest and I'll be wheezing, and it's not a good experience. Despite that pain, I couldn't change. So I had plenty of moments where I would have this like pep talk with myself, like, come on, I could picture myself in the morning getting ready for school, going into the shower and being like, today's the day, and I'm not gonna eat, whatever donuts or bagels or whatever else. I'm gonna have a salad at lunch.
At what age did you start?
This was high school, that I can discreetly remember this daily ritual of, I wouldn't call them pep talks. They weren't positive enough for that. They were talks of disappointment with myself, frustration with why I couldn't do it, and feeling really defeated before I'd even tried. Because when you look at 100 pounds to lose or any major feat in front of you, it's too much. And so I would keep hitting some point in the morning and I'd given up, because it's just like the weight of everything literally was too much. It's like staring up at a mountain and being like, well, I can't step to the top. But you're not stepping to the top. You take one step. And that's the bit I struggled to get is in none of those moments did I have to lose 100 pounds. I just had to make a better choice right then and there. And those choices add up. And the more better choices you make, the more success you have. And the more success you have, the better you feel. So you want to make more good choices than bad choices. And you start feeling this positive momentum. But I never allowed myself to get there because I was too crushed by the size of it.
Can you explain that in other words?
Yeah. So if you're looking at some big feat in front of you and you size it up, I was talking to someone about this that I was coaching the other day, and they're looking at a potential medical issue and getting a test done that may lead to needing another test, which may lead to a procedure, which may lead to a number of things they don't want. Or the test may come back negative and tell them it's this thing that actually is not a big deal and you just need to, let it run its course. But they were so stuck on the worst outcome, which is possible. It's not that they were irrational for wondering about it, but they were totally focused on it and saying, well, I can't have surgery, or I can't take this, I can't take that. You're not doing that today. Today is a decision around whether you have this test done or not. And it has nothing to do with surgery, because you're not having surgery today. You're not losing 100 pounds today. You're not getting to the top of the mountain today. Enrolling in college or law school or whatever it may be, you're not doing 3 years or 4 years or however long it is of schooling and having to pay for it and taking on the debt and all the exams. And I don't want to keep listing it because it's a lot of heavy weight, but none of that is happening today. Today you're submitting your application, or today you're getting up and going to class, and that's it. And it doesn't matter that you have an exam in 3 months. It's like I've run a marathon. That's such a great example of exactly what this is. Because the day I started training, I had been injured, so I hadn't run in months. So that day, I had done a half marathon. So you could say, well, you can already run halfway, so you're far along. No, I started from 0. My first run was 2 miles, not 13.1. And my training plan was 5 months long, and it ended with 26.2 on the day of the marathon. And I could not run that distance then. And I certainly couldn't run the sum total of all the miles. The total plan was something like 1,700 and I don't know, it was a lot of miles. It's in the book, maybe 740 something. Whatever it was a lot of miles. To look at all of that today, or to say, I did 2 miles and I'm done. I couldn't go further if I wanted to, or maybe a half a mile, but not much. How am I ever going to do 26.2? You're defeating yourself before you even get the chance to build up to it, because you don't have to run that distance today. And you have all kinds of experiences to go and all kinds of successes to build that will get you where you want to go. But none of that has to happen today. So let's do what we can do in this moment to get us forward. And then we'll look at tomorrow when tomorrow comes.
Oh, I understand what you're saying. Usually when I talk about running and somebody hasn't ever run, or it's been a long time and there's a huge hesitation, I say, all I'm asking is to run 1 block.
Yeah.
Just today, run 1 block. That's it. or if they're on the treadmill, I say just 10 minutes.
Yeah.
That's it. Open that gateway.
Yeah.
By just feeling it first.
Yeah.
And then their mind starts kicking in, and their mind starts connecting with their body, and then there's those layers that you take. So I totally understand what you're saying.
I ran 10 miles on the treadmill, 10 minutes on the treadmill this morning. I'm recovering from another knee injury. I'm often injured. This is my first time running in a few months. And I have a torn meniscus, and I'm trying not to have surgery, so I'm being very careful with it. So I did 10 minutes, I keep saying that, 10 minutes on the treadmill this morning. But actually I didn't. I ran 1 minute 10 times because of that. It was my first time back on. I was staring at a wall. I didn't really sleep last night, so I was tired. It didn't feel great. It was awkward. I haven't run in a while. It was slower than I'm used to running at. Mm-hmm. And to think of even only 10 minutes of discomfort and awkwardness and feeling like I'm so far behind and all the anxiety that can set in, that was a bit too much, even for me having run a marathon. So I said, okay, things at 10 and it's counting down, I can get to 9. It's not that far away. It's less than a minute now. And by the time you have that thought, it's even less. And when it gets to 9, then I'll think about it. And when it got to 9, I was like, yeah, I can go to 8. And then when it got to 8, etc., all the way down to 0. And when it stopped, I actually wished it was longer. But when I looked at it as 10, I heard all those voices in my head telling me, 10 minutes of this is too much.
Right.
Even for something that's relatively speaking,
even
very
1 minute.
Small. Yeah, there were a couple of those minutes where like, well, maybe I'll stop there. But I didn't allow myself to think of, 4:59 when I was at 5:03, because that's in the 4s. That has nothing to do with the 5s. I'm not there right now. I can get to when it says 5:00, and it worked. And I feel better for it. And it will probably feel awkward for a while, but I have my strategy. Yeah. I don't need to run 10 minutes or 10 miles or whatever it is. I'm just doing this stride right now.
Right.
And there'll be another one after that when I get to it, but I'm not there today.
Yeah. You're running with a torn meniscus.
I ran a marathon with a torn meniscus and didn't know. You can.
Wow.
It's all a question. And
technique.
We don't need to get into the biology, but it depends how it's sitting, and that's what causes pain. And I did something that had it sit the wrong way, and so it was re-aggravated. But I'm okay now. I want to get back into it slowly because I want to be able to run for my life. Mm-hmm. That not, run for your lives, but run for the rest of my life. I really enjoy it.
Yeah.
And that doesn't come from pushing too hard, letting that voice of you're so far behind where you used to be and you got to up your mileage and you have to go faster because you're too slow now. No. This isn't my living. I'm not a professional runner. So it's okay if I'm not as fast as I used to be. And the good news is the marathon actually didn't go well. So 5 months of training, I ended up getting sick right before. And so it didn't go to plan. The good news is whenever I get around to doing another one, it'll probably be a record for me personally, because the first one was just not what it should have been.
Yeah.
So that's, you can look at it negatively, or you can say, well, there's room to improve. Mm-hmm. And it's all our choice and the mindset.
Yeah. I would love to share a technique with you.
Yeah, please.
Yeah? Okay. So when I start running, I think about my feet. I check in with my feet and ankles first, or even down to my toes, or the sole of my feet. Mm-hmm. I ask myself, how is my feet? Are they aligned? Yeah. Do I need to adjust them? And I make an adjustment, and I say, perfect. Yeah. How's my ankles?
I love that you say perfect. Like you give yourself that celebration.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I ask, how is my ankles? Are they tight? Mm-hmm. Are they loose? And then I adjust, and then I say, perfect. How are my knees? Are my knees bent? Are they straight? How's my stride? And I adjust that, and I say, perfect. Mm. And then all the way up my hips. Is my sacrum tucked in? Is my belly tight? And I say, perfect. How are my shoulders? Mm. Are my shoulders dropped? Is my heart lifted? Yes, perfect. And then all the way up to my neck and my hands. Are my hands relaxed? Mm. And I run with my hands completely relaxed, no tight fists. Are my elbows tucked in? How are my arms? Perfect. And how is my mind? Is it relaxed? How is my jaws? Is there a slight space between my teeth? How's my tongue? Is my mind relaxed? So, yes, perfect. And then all of a sudden, my feet need to be adjusted.
Yeah.
So I go back down to my feet again, and before you know it, it's been miles.
Yeah.
And I'm done.
Miles of consciousness about your body.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's my gift to you.
Well, assuming that I run tomorrow, we'll see how my knee feels when I wake up.
Yeah.
I will do that.
Yeah. So let's move on with your book.
What I do in the book is I talk about what do a day is. It's a mindset for how to live, and it's what we're talking about. It's not the 100 pounds all right now. It's just what you have to do in this moment from a place of connection to what matters to you. And then I take you through a number of different situations in my life where this is sort of played out. And when I have and have not done a day, and when I say have not done it, I mean I'm letting my judgment and pain and attachment to yesterday carry forward into today, and I'm acting in relation to that. So things I've lost that I'm upset about, or what someone said to me, and then I bring that into my interaction with them now, even though it's finished, or my fear of what's yet to come. One of the situations I talked about is parenting. And to be totally fair, it was a difficult chapter to write about my son, because he's not just mine, he's my wife's also. And so part of me was holding back and feeling like I don't have license to speak so freely about, my son and parenting him, because I share that responsibility. And I know I felt it when I was writing, and I was conscious of it, but I didn't say anything. So the chapter was not what it could or should have been. And I struggled to find a good example. And actually, someone on Amazon even noted that. So one of the reviews is like, yeah, the parenting chapter's a little bit weak. The point's valid, but the story's not great. And they were 100% right. And I felt a bit like an imposter for it. Rather than dwelling in that feeling, when I rewrote the book to include self-love, I took that as an opportunity to be more honest with myself about the parenting chapter. And so actually, I don't even remember if I left the same story in. It may still be there. There's a story about my son choking on an ice cream cone and how I felt in that moment. I think that's still there. But what I didn't talk about was a time when I was disappointed in myself as a parent, where I felt I was not the father he deserved me to be. Aside from the general story of when my wife got very sick, and that was sort of my wake-up moment. He was just 2 years old, and he, at the time we thought my wife wasn't going to make it. And so to look at, as a 2-year-old, to lose your mother, the one parent you have left was me, and my anxiety-ridden behavior was not what he deserved. So I certainly talked about that.
That really hit me. That
It
really
still
did.
hits me.
I've watched that a few times. I thought, oh my gosh.
You can see it. I almost start crying on stage.
Yes.
And I've told that story, tons of times. I've written about it. And it's not just because I was on stage and there were lights or any of that. It hits me every time.
Because true compassion, you were hit with true compassion.
Yeah. It was the scariest thing I've ever had to face in my life. And I pray that it remains the scariest thing I ever have to face. Not just for me, but for my entire family. There's so much to that. My wife has a chronic illness. It reared its head in 2011. No one knew what it was, what to do about it. And frankly, the doctors were really not helping. They were more blaming her for just being depressed or anxious, or, you're doing this to yourself. And I sort of say, if you're as sick as she had become, how would you feel? So to blame someone for being upset about it, I don't think is the right path. She had wasted away, was bedridden, just about 100 pounds at that point. She was losing 2 pounds every single day over a 2-week period. And, my son is 2. I was able to work from home and take some time off so I could care for him and her and try to find someone to help us with him. And I get this call from her doctor that he's going on vacation. He'll be back in 6 weeks and he'll check in then, and there's really nothing to be done anymore. So essentially saying, I'm giving up and I'm going to Jamaica or wherever he's going to go for his lovely time. And he really didn't seem to care. And that's when it really became clear to me that I'm about to be a widower and a single dad, and nobody's helping. For a guy who grew up feeling like the sky is always falling, this was one of the few times where I think that feeling was really justified. And when I challenged the doctor about that, I said, she's not going to be here in 6 weeks. And he just said, oh, we'll take her to the ER. And he literally at that moment hung up the phone. He had to go pack or whatever.
Yeah.
And I had to walk back into our bedroom and face my wife. And my son was standing at the foot of the bed, essentially watching his mother die in front of him. And that, I'm ashamed to admit how much I needed that moment, but I did, because I wasn't willing to face any of how I was living before that. And today I'm not ashamed because I've grown from it, but I wish it didn't take that, but it did for me. And my wife is still here.
Yeah.
She did survive. She ended up finding someone to help through acupuncture. That's actually what stopped this downward spiral and gave her the space to figure out what else might be going on. But in seeing her in that bed with that knowledge from that phone call, it stopped me dead in my tracks. When I looked at her and I thought about how I was really so caught up in the logistics of our life and, making the food and cleaning and trying to get her to appointments, but never actually sitting with her in her pain. And if she tried to stop me to do that, I would get so worked up by all the weight on my shoulders of everything I had to do and all the things that weren't happening because I was sitting still for a minute, that I was agitated, and I said, I can't do this right now. I have to go and make dinner or put our son to bed or whatever it was. That is not serving her. I'm certainly not going to help her. And for that little boy, that's the way I was parenting him. 2-year-old, he just wants, read me a story, play with me, watch a show with me, whatever. He didn't watch TV back then. We're good parents. But I couldn't take the time for the humans I lived with. And that feeling was enough for me to know I needed to do better for them, and that meant changing my ways. Now that's the outer layer of the onion, and I wasn't yet ready to realize that way of living is not good enough for me, and I actually deserve better. I certainly did not feel like I deserved better, and I wasn't ready to face that yet. And that's why the book changed. And I did share a story of not a terrible parenting moment, but I was kind of a monster to my son around something as stupid as cutting his toenails. And again, when he was like 2 or 3, and this is a kid who was watching his mother die, right? And I'm like screaming at him because he is hiding his feet because he's scared to have his toenails cut, which I'm sure does not help him feel less scared to have them cut with me like yelling at him. I was out of control. I didn't hit him, but it wasn't okay. And I could view my actions in that moment and let it taint every interaction I have with him from that point forward. Or I could recognize what I did wrong, learn from it, grow from it, and never do that again. And of course, own it and apologize to him and explain how I feel in doing that to him and how sorry I am. That's do a day. Not doing it is to then, every time we got to cut his nails, to pull the same routine or to put it on him because I'm insecure about how I behaved.
Yeah.
It would not lead to a healthy relationship for the two of us.
That's so deep. If you didn't change, you'll remain in ignorance.
Yeah.
But you saw yourself, you heard yourself, and you continued to move forward.
Yeah.
And so you continue to move into wisdom.
I'm trying to.
Yeah.
And there's times when I do that and it goes really well, and there's times where I'm still in ignorance and I have more growth to go through, and that's why I say it's okay. And I don't
But
want to be
that's our
done.
goal
Yeah.
too, right?
Yeah.
Our goal is to always move out of ignorance.
Yeah.
Always, for the rest of our lives.
Yeah. And it's okay not to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I try to share my very real stories of my own struggles with these things. That just because I wrote a book on it does not mean I'm perfect and I'm done. And that's okay.
Yeah.
And we don't have to act like we aren't still growing and learning. And there are times where we struggle. And, I'm not over my anxiety. It's still there. I know how to deal with it now. But sometimes it does still deal with me. And that's okay. That's part of life.
Yeah.
I don't let that then spiral me out of control. I can come back and I can still achieve.
Yeah. And going back to your wife, I had this visual when you were standing there observing your son and observing your wife. I thought how wonderful it would be very painful, is if we can inhale all of their pain for a moment and close our eyes and just feel how they feel. I bet you we'll all be full of compassion right away. But I think it's amazing that you were aware of it, that you heard yourself and you stopped and assessed the situation and made a change.
Yeah. We have to.
Embracing the light as well as the shadows.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all good. So you have this new book.
I do.
That's out.
I have a copy just for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And so here it is.
Yeah. It's for you.
50-75-100. The 50-75-100 solution.
Yes. And the subtitle's important too, because no one knows what the numbers mean, but it's build better relationships. And the numbers are merely our share of a relationship. It's not 50-50, which is how people tend to think. It's not me versus you, because that sort of thinking leads to, you're doing this to me, or why won't you just see my worth, or love me more, or be kind to me? It's not going to lead to anything better. And I tend to then feel powerless,
Right.
or like I have no control. And when we're in situations where we feel we don't have control, it's difficult. So I think, actually, it's not 50-50. I think we have our 50, our half of the equation, and we can influence half of the other person. And this is where Buddhist principles come in. But I can reach into your half and do that through the version of me I'm giving you to interact with. Because part of you is a reaction to me. So if I give you a better version of me, you can't help but react differently. And so that can drive not 50-50, but actually 75%. I've got my half plus half of you, which is your reactions to me. If you can make a problem 75% better and get it out of a vicious cycle into a virtuous one, where I'm giving you a better version of me, you're reacting better, I'm going to react better to that, we start to roll that snowball towards 100% better, which may mean the relationship ends. It doesn't mean that we're best friends. It doesn't mean a marriage that's going to end necessarily doesn't end. It doesn't mean you stay in an abusive relationship, but it does mean it's better than what it is right now, even if it means you're not together. And it's not just about romantic relationships. It can be work. It can be your parents, your siblings. We relate to people every day.
Every day.
In all kinds of ways. And that's our life experience. So why wouldn't you want it to be better?
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful. And so you have a podcast?
I do. I have a podcast tied to Do a Day.
Okay. So, so could you tell us about the podcast and how our viewers can connect with you?
Yeah. So the book Do a Day is my story. The podcast Do a Day is my guest story. So my story will not resonate with everybody. Whether it's about weight or marathons or my wife's experience, it's not going to resonate with everyone. So I bring guests on who have amazing backgrounds of something they've faced. The way that they've gone through that challenge has left them inspired. And they're now sharing that story out. So the hope is someone listening, just like I want even just one person who reads the book, even one person listening, feels themselves in that guest and sees a path out of the stuck that they're in to bring better into their life. And they can go, everything for Do a Day is at doadaybook.com, including the podcast. But the easiest way to get everything is just my name, if you can spell it. It's bryanfalchuk.com. It's BRYANFALCHUK.com. And the books are there, the podcast is there. And yeah, I try to put out as much as I can for other people to take in.
Yes, I see that.
Thank you.
You are amazing.
Thank you, Bridget.
You really are.
You are too.
Yes. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for being on my show.